Killzone 2 released in 2009 and still holds up today. Don't believe me? Have a look. The game's opener puts you in the boots of Sergeant Thomas Sevchenko, a member of Alpha Squad within the ISA, tasked with infiltrating and securing Pyrrhus, which is the capital of Helgen. This was the intro that set the stage for the rest of this entire battle, a science fiction version of D-Day Normandy storming the beaches of Pyrrhus as mortar shells rain hell upon the Helghast city. Set after Killzone Liberation, Killzone 2 was the first title in the series to launch on the PlayStation 3, which up until that point had only been carried by Resistance and Resistance 2 as their main flagship FPS, with the former being a launch title for the console in 2006. Now, even though Killzone 2 released 5 years after the original, it was first spotted out in the open back in 2005 at E3. The trailer we got at the time was a showcase of what was to come on the upcoming PlayStation 3 console. Not to be one-upped by Microsoft at the time with the release of the 360, Sony had to bring that heat. And that heat, they did.
Get off the thing! Spread out! Move towards the bridge! Get him off the beach! Get off the beach now! My hell got caught on the top! This guy's a trash, you son of a bitch! Jeez, oh my god!
Now, after watching the trailer, you can see that the heat they brought was from their pants that were clearly on fire. That entire trailer was a pre-rendered internal video within Guerrilla Games that was shown to a PlayStation rep around the time of E3 and was used within their E3 showcase to show audience what was coming on the PlayStation 3. The problem is, Guerrilla didn't know anything about that until that day.
For a while, we worked on an internal vision video about what a first-person shooter game could look like for the next generation. And it was meant for internal use only. And then somebody from, I believe it was the marketing group in the States said, yeah, and this is running real time on a PlayStation 3. And we were watching this back home going like, no, what does he just say? Because, you know, that's not true. But then we figured like, yeah, you know, nobody will believe that because it's obvious that it's all rendered. And then we went online and lots of people actually did believe it. And then we were like, oh, this is not good.
See, Killzone 2 was originally set to release on the PlayStation 2 during the later part of its life cycle.
Because when we started, it was going to be a Killzone. Yeah, Killzone 2 was originally a PlayStation 2 game.
Thankfully, that decision was put to rest and Guerrilla was set on creating a game on the much stronger cell processor-powered PS3. I recently went back to recomplete the campaign, and what we received in 2009 was a stunning first-person shooter. From the graphics to the audio to the level design, almost everything about this game still stands the test of time. Listening to the Helghast scum through their modulated voice boxes as they cry out to their king with blood filling their helmets, the meaty feel of the weapons as they punch bullets through mutated scum, the environments covered in dull grays, greens, and blacks. It was a style choice at the time that resonated with high school Big Fry so much, and is mainly the reason I fell in love with games like Killzone, Resistance, and Gears of War so much during this time. It's a tone and a vibe that I wish we could go back to. We're trying, okay? One thing my rose-colored glasses didn't reveal is just how poor the controls hold up. 14 years later, I was quickly reminded how much I hated ADSing with the right joystick, L1 being your melee, L2 being your crouch and your cover button, with grenades being set to R2. Now, I know you can swap control schemes within the game, but I find that alternate 2 is the most familiar option. It definitely flips that melee and that ADS button. But I wonder now, who cleared the default choice? On top of the controls being a little bit out of whack for my taste, the movement and the aiming just feel sluggish now. Google searches bring up the exact same things being discussed on forums back 14 years ago, with most people landing on the idea that it might not be the game, but the controller itself. A forum thread on NeoGAF points to the weighty feeling of the combat having more to do with the engine's input lag than actual game design itself. And I have to say, going back showed me the game was much more of a chug than I remember. Constant freezing while trying to load past the next checkpoint, combined with the clunky controls and the movement, alongside an FOV that might as well be set to 0, there are definitely parts of this game that don't hold up. But even so, my time revisiting Killzone 2 has actually been awesome. Playing through the campaign and experiencing the story again, I found myself going, oh yeah, more times than I actually thought I would. I have vivid memories of the first time playing the game and jumping into the multiplayer, which is a whole other animal. But as time always does, it moved forward, and after 14 years, it was actually a trip to be introduced to Evelyn Batten, watching Garza take his last breaths at the hands of Radek's men, and that ending. What a way to leave us on a cliffhanger. One thing I completely forgot about was the use of motion controls. Back in the PS3 days, we had a ton of games utilizing Sony's 6-axis control scheme, using motion controls to turn valves and plant charges on buildings. It was a nice, non-intrusive way to utilize the tech, and I wish more games at the time would have nailed that design as well as Killzone did. Let's talk about the multiplayer. Up to 32 players fighting for either the Helghast or the ISA in class-based gameplay with roles like Scout, Medic, Engineer, Tactician, or Saboteur. I have fond memories of the early days of Killzone 2 multiplayer, but much like other games at the time, it couldn't pull me from my one true love, SOCOM. And once you got to the late game, as you leveled your classes and your character, I found that the engineer balancing was way too overpowered. People were placing turrets in corners of rooms and camping galore. I will say the multiplayer was gorgeous and it was unique with the way the game modes kind of laid out, but it definitely had its issues. One cool aspect of multiplayer I didn't get into was the clan system. You could have up to 64 player clans, which could earn valor points that you could bet on future tournament games. This was one thing that PlayStation IPs excelled at versus the competition, was their clan support systems, and looking back, I wish I would have invested more time into Killzone's multiplayer, especially seeing the experiences that we get nowadays. Cool thing is you can still play Killzone 2 online right now with the revival servers. I tried a few different times to log on during the making of this video, but I could never find a game. It's not like when you jump onto SOCOM Confrontation now, where there's like 100 people playing every night it seems. The multiplayer had 8 maps at launch, with another 6 being released as post-launch DLC. Long gone are the days of meaty, action-packed, brotherly destruction war titles like this, with a campaign lasting around 8 hours, telling a story of 2 opposing worlds clashing in battle, a stellar set design, polished visuals, and deep cuts of gunfire, enemies, all buttered on top of a soundtrack composed by Joris de Man, who also composed the score for for Horizon Forbidden West. Killzone 2 is the pinnacle of FPS for me, and it came out at a time where I was so ingrained in military FPS. This game was incredible. Dark, gritty science fiction, placing you as a pawn in a chess game being played by much larger forces. If Killzone 2 would have came out with co-op at the time, which I know it would have been next to impossible, it would have been one of the best FPSs to ever release. But even with the issues it has today, I still believe if you have a chance to play Killzone 2, you should take the time. I place this game among the likes of Battlefield 3 and Crysis for games that pushed the technical boundary forward for visuals and polish while delivering on an experience that clearly trumps the original. You just don't see those kind of games anymore. And instead of complaining about it and talking about what could have been, I wanted to take a moment today, 14 years later, almost to the day, to cherish the game for what it was. My name is Big Fry, and I'll see you on the next one.